Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's hard not to see your faces. I'm used to Zoom, but I know you're there, and I really thank you for being here. I'm gonna just allow there to be a little silence while we enter the room and get settled. And have a sense of one another's presence here. I'm inviting myself and everyone to arrive in our bodies, in this place and time with one another, to wonder what it is that we're feeling in our bodies. Allowing ourselves to settle. It's very fun to see people checking in. So I'm going to talk for a while, and then I hope we'll have some dialogue. Nikki says we can have other people on the screen. We see how this goes. What a great and beautiful honor to be asked to do this Dharma talk. You know, Lama Rod is my teacher and also my descendant. My friend Kalivia, who is here tonight and joining Bumis Parsha for the first time, I'm pretty excited. The first time she heard Lama Rod talk, because we met, Kalivia and I, when we were 19 years old, and we were the only lesbians that in the universe, we thought, until we met another one. What she said the first time she heard him speak was, "We dreamed of you, we prayed for you." And that is so true. The queer people of my generation, of her generation, and many of you remember this time, there was a point where I realized that I didn't know any LGBTQ people who hadn't considered suicide or attempted it. And now to have a teacher like Lama Rod, to have a community like Bumis Parsha, means more to me than I can possibly tell you. So I want to invoke all of my and our queer and activist ancestors, Bayard Rustin, Sylvia Rivera. There are so many queer and Black ancestors, activists, Audre Lorde, Polly Murray, people who paved the way at a time when I think we can't imagine how difficult it was to be who they are. So in Bumis Parsha, I am learning how to invoke my ancestors, and it has really been helping me. This is a time when I need to be doing that. So I invoke those people like Michael Callan, AIDS activist, who died so young. And I welcome everyone here who's just arriving, and I want to just keep saying welcome, especially if you're here for the first time. Bumisparsha is a very special community, and some of you may not know that it means touching the earth. This is a time when we really need to be touching the earth and allowing the earth to love us and heal us, which is one of the things we talk about every Monday night at some point at Medicine Buddha. So the other thing that I love about Bumisparsha, besides as an activist feeling very comfortable here, which is not normal for Buddhist communities. Most Buddhist communities I've been in, being an activist is really considered deviant. And when we talk sometimes in these communities about how our hearts are breaking, about how we are passionately yearning for the hungry to be fed, for the captives to be free, for the homeless to be housed, for the stranger to be welcomed, for justice, for an end to white supremacy. When we allow those feelings of longing, like we might long for a lover, for an end to these systems of oppression that cause so much suffering, we're counseled that we're not very good Buddhists, that we should have more equanimity. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I have on a number of occasions. Have more equanimity and somehow be able to modulate our subjective reaction to this suffering. But our teachers, our ancestors have taught us a different way of being, a way that is truth, that is connected. I always think about Alice Walker saying, when you cut the branch of a tree, your arm bleeds. And I think after a certain amount of time of practicing devotion, practicing prayer, we start to feel that way, and we start to really feel the suffering of the world. And one of the teachings that I hold most dear from Lama Rod is, it doesn't necessarily get easier. It doesn't necessarily get easier as we become more and more liberated, more and more free. But I'll get to that. I want to tell you a story about when I was in my 20s. And I was part of a very ragamuffin church in a re-rented space in this rundown building in Greenwich Village on 13th Street. And we were all poor and we were all struggling. And we were that generation of queer people who, either then or later considered suicide because there was no place in the world for us. But together we found a lot of strength, and we had faith in who we were because we saw each other's beauty. Because we saw each other's gifts and learned how to take care of each other. So one day, renting this rundown building in the city, it occurred to a few of us that this was the last big city-owned building in Greenwich Village, 1982, middle of the AIDS crisis, beginning of the AIDS crisis anyway, a lot of deaths all around us. And we realized if there's ever going to be an LGBTQ center in New York City, in Greenwich Village, it's got to be this building. All the other big buildings have been sold to the developers. So we just decided to occupy the building. The city said, sorry, you're evicted. We're going to sell this building. We knew it was going to go to a developer. And we said, look, we want this building. We think that you should give us this building. And it was, really in retrospect, kind of nuts because we had probably about $250 between us. And I remember Luis Avanzado was this dyke, that was a word we used a lot back then, who would shovel the coal in the basement. We had a coal furnace, who would shovel out the ashes All winter long, she kept us safe while we occupied the building and told the city officials to go away. And Julie, this very butch dyke, these were words that we used then, but it's expressive. Large white woman who was probably would be had been a great bouncer, and she would tell the city officials where to go, and she would answer the phones. And meanwhile, we just had this faith. And in retrospect, I realized, we were grassroots organizers. What did we know about how to pull off a sale of a huge real estate deal in New York City? But what I didn't know, and this is the point of the story, I didn't know that, there were people in our congregation or people that we knew who were sleeping with other people who were investment bankers or went to the bars or the baths, right, in those days with people who knew someone on the city council or who had the ear of the mayor. And then there were the corporate lawyers who were also connected to the gay community, of course, in the closet, but we knew each other. And that's how we got the building, even though those of us who were shoveling coal or answering the phones or just holding on to the faith that history has given us this building, this would not have happened without all of these different layers of not only activists, but powerful people who had connections and money. And now, now that building on 13th Street, when you go to New York, it's a multi-million-dollar building, completely renovated, that serves thousands and thousands of people every year, hundreds of organizations. So I want to tell that story because this can be such an overwhelming time, but we're not seeing everything that's happening. And it is for us to do what it is that we have to do, whatever it is. And that's why we have these practices, because they teach us to listen and find out what it is that we're supposed to do. And I know in those years, I was feeling completely unequal to this task. Illness, death, poverty, all kinds of things. A lot of homeless people, a lot of people killed and dying. And I didn't know how to do any of it. I didn't know how to do it. And I kept begging God, for one thing, for a teacher, for a spiritual teacher, which didn't come for many years, really. But also just, surely you can find someone better to do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm not good at it. And I felt like what I heard in my listening, in my prayer, meditation, begging God to be released from this work. Yeah, you're kind of a mess. And you're the best I've got right now. You have to just hang in there. Even if you can't do all the things that you think you should be able to do and other people seem to think that you should be able to do, it's okay. Just hang in there. I think that for many of us, maybe for days, hours or days or weeks or longer, years maybe, the best thing we can do is just hang in there. And it's enough. And the more the world is trying to kill us, the more important it is that we stay alive. And then when we're able to do more than stay alive, then we keep listening. Then we keep listening. And who knows what we might be told to do. That listening to both the subtle voices and to the people to whom we are led is kind of all we need, in a way, because it's a lot bigger than we are, all of it. So I got off track talking about Bumis Parsha because I just want to be so grateful to Lama Justin and Lama Rod. Authentic spiritual teachers are rare. And it's the longing of our hearts which has brought us to these teachers. Our longing for the truth, our longing for really abundant life, our longing for justice, our need for a different world, and our need to be part of bringing that world about. And I'm very grateful for our teachers and for this community. And I also want to thank all the people behind the scenes who make this community work. There's a lot of work. Nikki's doing tech tonight. There's always a tech person. There are so many people who make this happen. And what I also love is that we are constantly invited in to give our gifts, to give our gifts, which is not always easy. Like I signed up for tech and I made every single mistake it was possible to make with tech. I mean, some of them just really embarrassing. And with Zoom, really, I haven't even tried this, but we're invited to learn and to make mistakes and to grow and to give our gifts, because we all have something to give, and we're giving something by our presence, by our very presence. Emma Goldman said, those who had read queer books had dreamed queer dreams and had even been queer in the face of death. People out of the ordinary, those with a vision, have ever been considered queer. Yet they have often been sanest in a crazy world. Bumis Parsha for me is a place of queer people. And you may not all think of yourselves as queer, but if you can think of queerness as like Emma Goldman talks about, our teachers have written some pretty queer books. They're queer in different ways, but many people would consider these books queer. Many of our teachings might be considered queer. But I love this word in the broadest sense of the word. People who had dreamed queer dreams and had even been queer in the face of death. Our, I think, queer ancestor, Jesus, pretty queer in the face of death. People out of the ordinary, people with a vision, have ever been considered queer. Yet they have often been sanest in a crazy world. So, crazy doesn't even begin to describe the world right now. As we become more and more awake, we see the world as actually what I call the dominant culture is actually psychotic. And so many of us all our lives, because we are queer in this sense or in other senses, may have felt that we've been rowing upstream for our whole life. Never meant to survive, as Audre Lorde said. Never meant to reach our full potential, never meant to really know who we are, who we're meant to be. And yet, to the extent that we have been able to not be the tiny, shrinking people, we were taught to be the little, quiet people, or the invisible people, but to be the powerful people that we are. To the extent that we've been able to do that, we have been resisting the psychosis, the lies, the gaslighting that has always gone on. It's just more apparent right now, I think. And for some of us, there are moments of waking up, many layers of waking up. And my old friend of 40 7 years is here tonight, Colivia, who prayed for Lama Rod, for a queer spiritual teacher activist like him. But we met when we were 19, about 19, and I was expecting Prince Charming to come. White man, white horse. That was my deal. Grew up in the suburbs, completely gaslighted about everything, and I met Colivia and fell in love. And for our first date, really, the first time we ever went anywhere, we went to the police station in Meadville, Pennsylvania, because a young man that she had gone to high school with, Scoochie Baxter, had died in his jail cell. And I remember being the only white person in that crowd, and I remember when it dawned on me that all of the people outside that police station who had loved Scoochie Baxter and were demanding justice were convinced that he had been murdered because they had seen this before. And I remember just realizing that, like the scales fell off my eyes, and in that moment, I saw the lie of America, of white supremacy. I saw it. And I saw that I had been living in a whole different world for 19 years. And I remember in that moment, I was standing with this woman that I loved, still trying to get over that she was a woman, really. And I looked at her, I looked into her eyes, and she said to me, "I love you." And then for the second time, I was changed because I knew how much I loved her. I had never been in love before, and you know how it just opens you up. And so the truth of our love for each other, the truth of what I knew was real about the experience of the people I was standing with, shifted everything for me forever. A few months later, it was actually about 5 months later, when she called me up and said, "I found another one." And I knew immediately she meant another lesbian. We didn't know anyone else. We didn't really have a word. We didn't know. We were just in love with this woman. So that's what it was like. And it meant so much to me when she came into Durham to be with Lama Rod, and that she's here tonight. These people that transform us, that we look into their eyes and we know the truth about ourselves, who we really are, what we're really capable of, and what we really want. These practices that we do together of prayer, meditation, chanting, devotion, visualization, all of these practices over time, what we do is we find which one or ones we're drawn to, which teachers we're drawn to, and then if we can really just commit because of our longing for truth and because we know how important we are to the liberation of the world, how important our practice of truth and listening within ourselves is to the liberation of the world. So we commit to these practices, and what they do over time is they dig a very deep well within us. They help us to discover the divinity within us. None of the words are really adequate. Our own, who we really are, and of course who everyone really is, but we have to do it for ourselves. It's like digging a well. These practices, together with our intention, our devotion, our trust in our teachers, which is why we need authentic teachers, dig a deep, deep well. And I think of Jesus' words, living water, that we begin to be able to reach this living water that then wells up this this bliss of who we really are. And it's in all of us. Sometimes we have to spend a long time practicing to find it, trusting that it's there. Because then it really is like it bubbles up from within us. It's a sweetness that we taste, sometimes alone, sometimes with other people, sometimes in nature. I'm sure there's a lot of ways. On Sunday, I was in front of the White House on Black Lives Matter Plaza, visiting some activists, trying to learn from them. And we were, doing silly stuff. We were holding up signs that said, honk if you want to vote Trump out or something like that. And Black Lives Matter signs, and don't say you didn't know because you know, and strong men are weak, and just signs like that, and not saying anything. But there was disco music, and we were dancing with our signs, and we were holding up our signs so everyone could see them. And, only one person spit at us, and 19 or 25 out of 20 or 26 cars seemed to agree with us. And I could feel that in Washington, there's a dystopian feeling. And at the same time, I could see and feel a whole different thing breaking through. Not only in these people I was with and having so much fun with and feeling so much joy just coming out of my body, because I felt we were in alignment with some great truth and we were not alone at all. But also because of the signs, because of the murals, because of Black Lives Matter painted on the plaza, even because of the big balloon. The various, it's a giant rat, with Trump's face, and it's traveling around Washington, D.C. right now. I remember Black Lives Matter, ACT UP had such clever ways of expressing activism, of expressing outrage and grief. But, remember the chants. The chants were like, your gloves don't match your shoes, because the police were afraid of touching people during AIDS, and so they would wear these bright blue latex gloves. And I remember when ACT UP put a condom on Jesse Helms' house. A giant condom on the house in DC, which would, I guess, be like putting a giant mask on the White House or something. And I'm weaving together my sense of what queer people are, not only people who may use that identity as non-binary or gay or lesbian or LGBTQ or trans, whatever words, not only people who might actually feel that they're queer in that sense, but also those who had read queer books. Books like The Sower, The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Those who had read queer books had dreamed queer dreams of an end to white supremacy, when enough people wake up, to an end to patriarchy. The Women's March on Saturday, the most popular sign was, my favorite season is the fall of patriarchy, which is so silly, but that was the mood, the fall of patriarchy. And meanwhile, the Senate is doing the opposite thing. And I know people are from many countries here, so forgive me for all of these United States stories, but this tipping point between white supremacy and something completely different, between raping the earth and its people and something completely different, fighting for land, fighting with the indigenous people, the water protectors, the indigenous people all over the world who are dying and being killed because they're fighting for their land. This is happening everywhere in the world. I know that it's not just this country, it's just my context. So this beautiful march, larger in October than January, the Women's March in DC, even though there's COVID now. And the signs, like, if you take away my birth control, I'll just make more feminists. People who had even been queer in the face of death. I think about the people who have died. I think about Jesus who was crucified and George Floyd who was lynched. I think about Breonna Taylor who was murdered in her bed. And I know that for every death, there are many more people waking up. I think that we've started to see that. And we want an end to all the deaths. We want an end to the great lie that birthed this country and built this country, built its economy. So right now we're fighting, and this is, I think, true in many countries, for two different countries. We're fighting for the white supremacy country, and we're fighting for this vision that is queer and quite possible. Quite possible. And we see glimpses of it. We see glimpses of it all the time. Like in those days, we started a dinner for people with AIDS. And it's still going on, but with COVID, people couldn't come and sit together and have fellowship. So I just got an email from my friend Janine, who's still carrying on the dinner. And she said, I wrote it down, what she said. She said that we had to, just give out food this time. We just gave bags of food. And it's the first time we've had to do that. But she was so happy. She said, it was strangely great. And I know exactly what she's talking about. That when hearts are open and we're looking in each other's eyes and we're realizing, oh, look at this love. I love this person. I don't even know this person. I love this person. This person is fully divine and fully human, just like me, like all of us. And we see each other. We see each other's beauty and divinity. And she said, it was strangely great. It was strangely great to see each other. And that's what we used to call the kingdom of God. Not the people, not really the powerful people who really did buy the building. Sometimes where we look around and really see the kingdom of God are like on the psych ward at the VA, or when we really talk to a homeless person, when we really have a conversation with someone who we've been afraid to talk to, ashamed to talk to. That's when it breaks through. Queer people out of the ordinary, those with a vision, have ever been considered queer, yet they have often been sanest in a crazy world. Monday night, Lama Rod ended Medicine Buddha with something like these words, breathe and push. And many teachers and leaders are saying this same thing. Push now, push. In these, for us in the United States, the last few weeks before the election, if you can, push. Because we are at a true tipping point. It feels like chaos some days. And it's important to remember that change comes out of chaos, that's kind of normal, that it has to get pretty chaotic before change can break through. And old things have to die and pass away so that new things can be born. We want an end to white supremacy like we want a lover. We want an end to the patriarchy, to predatory capitalism like we want a lover. That passion we feel, that longing we feel. And of course, that means that things have to die. Of course. That means some things have to die. Institutions have to fall apart, and it's messy. And the truth is that we can tolerate a lot of chaos if we know how to ground ourselves, which is another thing that these practices teach us. Bhumisparsha, touch the earth. Touch the earth and let it support you. As Lama Rod says a lot, let it love you. It loves you. That same love that I saw in the eyes of someone that loved me, loves me still, that I see in the eyes of so many people that I just managed to pause long enough to look. That love, which is the source of all of this phenomenal world, all of it. And we are that. We are that. Just touch it, and hopefully wherever you are, there's a tree that you can have a relationship with, at least one tree. There's the sky, there's the ground. We can tolerate a lot of chaos if we know how to ground ourselves and have practices to feel ourselves sitting in this body, on this chair or on this cushion. In this system that we live in produces a lot of trauma, and we've all lived through a lot of trauma. And of course, there's intergenerational trauma. So this added trauma of recent times for us is re-traumatizing all of us. And again, we know about trauma. We know about it. We know that it calls us to be very compassionate with ourselves, to learn to hold ourselves patiently with great tenderness. And when trauma comes, many of us from an early age learned to make ourselves small, learned to tighten up, learned to shrink, learned to push it away, learned to go numb, learned to dissociate. We learned all of that. And it's in our bodies, it's in our nervous systems, all of that. And what we learn through these practices, those of us who've been made small, those of us who've been pushed down, silenced, told that we're going to hell or we're no good or all the things we've been told. Too loud, too much of this, too little of that, whatever. Not ladylike. I don't know. Too ladylike. All of us who've been told these things, who even were pushed, some of us, to the brink of death, wanting to die. Now's the time. Now's the time for us, instead of being small, to be as big as we can possibly be. I mean, our energy, because if we didn't have that power, why would they try to crush us? If our energy weren't so threatening to this extractive, abusive, dominating culture, if we weren't threatening in our very being, in this energy, this queer or black and queer or fat or any kind of thing that we are. It's our energy that is so scary. So let's be scary. Let's be as big as we are. And I'm really learning a lot about how allowing my feelings, especially brokenheartedness, rage, all kinds of feelings, you know them all, spaciousness, allowing that space, then I can allow all of my space to be there. Learning to relax instead of tighten. Learning to expand instead of shrink. And learning what I can trust and who I can trust, and trusting that in them. And those others, paying them no mind. Really, I don't care. Because we have to lean into what is being born and let go of what is dying. Relationships that are dying, ideas that are dying, lies that no longer hold us. You know, it was Valerie Kaur who talked at the beginning of this interminable administration about how, what if this darkness that we're feeling is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? And what we have to do, again, is push. Just breathe and push. And then relax, because we can't push all the time, right? And then push. Just keep pushing to the extent that we can. And it's a razor's edge, because we have to take care of ourselves and each other and form a culture of care for each other. And just one more thing before I hope we can open this up. I just want to talk for a minute about grief, because it was a shock to me. I once was a hospice nurse and learned about grief then. And it was a shock to me that grief has all kinds of somatic symptoms. So grief is an inevitable result of what we're living through right now. And, you know, grief can make us really tired, really tired. Like we think there must be something wrong with us physically. It's grief. It can do that. It might be grief if you're feeling really fatigued. If you're feeling confused, it has cognitive symptoms. I'm not saying other things can't cause these things, but it's surprising. Physical pain. So the hope is that through the practices of listening deeply enough to know, oh, this is my chest feeling tight. This is grief. And then bringing softness and compassion and space to that. Then we don't have to go into all these other distressing symptoms. We can move through it. We can, as Lama Rod teaches, metabolize it. I really love that word. So one more thing. I keep saying that. This might be the last. I came across this prayer of Shanti Deva, and it expresses something about the world that is passing away and the world that is being born. So Shanti Deva said, all the joy the world contains has come through wishing happiness for others, while all the misery the world contains has come from wanting pleasure for oneself alone. I think we've seen what misery comes from people who just want their own pleasure and use others to get it. And I think that what we're feeling in our bodies, in our communities, in each other's eyes, is that the world contains great joy. Because we are practicing not for our own liberation, but because we long for the liberation of all, not only liberation, food, shelter, healthcare, voting, everything, everything. We long for that. We wish that happiness for others. And as long as we can hang on, even though, the odds weren't good that we would be able to hang in there, but we're here. And keep getting bigger instead of smaller. There's great hope for the world, because there's a lot we're not seeing. There are people all over the world doing just the same thing we're doing right now. I have this great bell that I'm going to ring now that is actually across the room, but I want to ring it. And then maybe put things in the chat or in the question box, or just sit for a minute, whatever feels right to you. Thank you so much. I wonder, oh, such beautiful comments. Thank you. Yeah, I'll just say, when Colivia called me and said she'd found another one, um, and so we went to Boston, and we went to Metropolitan Community Church of Boston, a queer church, and we went to a bar, the first time I'd been to a gay bar. And I felt like I was home for the first time in my life, that I had found my tribe. And big shift, big beauty. And in those years that I worked full time in the LGBTQ community, all I saw was our beauty. All I saw was, I was so blown away by who we are. And in a way, no wonder people have worked so hard to kill us. Because once we get it, our beauty, once we really let it go, that I don't even know who we are. And that's even bigger now. Like, I didn't have the word non-binary. I didn't understand much about gender at all, and I've learned a lot from young people. But it's even bigger now. Our message to the world in our bodies and in our language and our words. Oh, thank you. I love these comments. Thank you so much. Yeah, everything living starts in darkness and needs to be nurtured. Yeah, everything living starts in darkness and needs to be nurtured. Yeah, so Kirby, that was I told that story because you said I'm insanely grateful for queer and authentic spiritual teachers who are also activists. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, here's this place, Bumisparsha. So cool. A few people here for the first time. That was Kalivia who said, "Thank you for reminding us that everything living starts in darkness and needs to be nurtured." I didn't realize that. Um, oh, ask a question. Oh, let's have a question. Um, what would you say to young queer folks right now who feel disconnected from our history and struggle? Yeah. Oh, what a good question. That's a question from Lama Rod. I think what I want to say is I love you. I love you. When I see you, my heart explodes. You're so beautiful. And you are our wildest dream. You are. And I know you could be finding your way. And I wish so much this wasn't such a hard time for anyone to find their way in. Um, but I think what I would say is you are, you're my children and my grandchildren, soon to be great grandchildren, the young queer people who are coming of age. You do have people who came before who love you, and when I see you, it gives me hope for the world. And don't be afraid of being who you are. uh, it will get you into trouble, maybe. Try to be safe. But don't be afraid of who you are, because I think the more we allow uh, our queerness to unfold, the more we help this tipping away from dystopia and death and genocide and necrophilia and all those things and lies. You know, it is within us. It is within us, whatever it is, that we were born to bring forth. And also, I truly believe that we signed up for this time. We signed up to be here now, as hard as it may seem. And I think it's sort of like Lama Rod, how you often say, invoke your ancestors. You may not know who they are, but they know who you are. So even for young queer people, if you don't know the history of the queer people and queer activists who came before you, we see you. We see you, and we need you, and we love you. And you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. And you're like a flame that we want to feed. I really love that quote. I'm always quoting Jesus because that was one of my lineages. But he said in the Gospel of Thomas, if you bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth that which is within you, that which is within you will destroy you. So a very serious quote. So I think that the more that young queer people bring forth their own true, authentic self, They are in a continuous line with those of us who did that before you. So I thank you for that question. Kirby, say more. Do you want to say more? I probably don't fully get it yet. And I wonder if anyone would like to join me on and have a little bit of a dialogue. And it's okay if it's enough. If you're done. We can sit for a little while, and then you can just see. I'm going to just drop in a question for you if you do want to do that, if you just want to sit. So let's just sit together. Yeah, thank you for saying that. We chose this time. Yeah. So just sitting together for a minute to see if there's more that we want to explore, or if someone else would like to also speak in the chat or the question or on screen. Let's just relax for a minute. And consider the longing of your heart. Consider, what is it that you're longing for? And see if you can relax. We're all living through this time. Thank you for staying alive through this time. Thank you for practicing. And thank you for the longing of your heart. See if something opens up about what you long for. And also see what opens up about your intention. What is it that you're called to do right now? Why are you here at this moment in this time? This very consequential time. Can you feel that you're called to it? Can you feel that you're exactly what is needed? Oh, thank you, Kirby. Yeah. Yeah, this thing that happens where activists get shamed in Buddhist communities. And thank you for saying that it doesn't work for you. Yeah, me neither. Uh, yeah, and sometimes it takes a while before we have to just say, that really doesn't work for me. So thank you for saying that. And Audre Lorde, yeah, that poem, you were never meant to survive. So it is better to speak because you were never meant to survive. You're welcome. Lama Rod, thank you, Lama Rod, for asking this question. Lama Rod asked, what was something you learned in the AIDS epidemic that is important for us to know now? Um, I think the most important thing that happened for me during the AIDS epidemic was I really got it that we're all going to die. That death is going to happen, and watching so many people my own age dying. Well, every time we see someone die, we're really looking at our own death. So that's the biggest thing that changed for me because it made me understand that there is no time to waste. How very precious is this life, this breath, just to be here breathing, to be able to see things and touch things and people and creatures and living things and the sky, that wonder that is opened up when we realize what a tiny time we have to do those things. And the other thing that happened during the AIDS epidemic was the city, state, and federal government were completely inept. But also, I think I think it was because it was gay men at that time, gay men and Haitians who were dying. And I think that it was radicalizing for me to understand how much, there's so many layers of this, but how much in this culture some lives are valued over other lives. And that was kind of another awakening to what supremacy is, really. That's what supremacy is. Some lives are just not valued. And so to watch so many people that I loved, some of our closest friends, die in front of our eyes, and have the government be so like, okay, fine, they're just going to die, much like now, actually, was radicalizing. And so it knitted me even more closely to the community that I love and treasure, because we were in so much danger, real danger. I learned a lot about activism from the dying young men who, even though they were dying, were out there on the street dumping the ashes of their lovers on the White House lawn, taking over the NIH, in mass movements demanding medicine. And how activism, much like buying the building, it does require every single level. It requires the powerful people, the kind of middle people, and the so-called leftist people. It requires everyone to make real change. And that's definitely true now. We need everyone. We need everyone to see and to care and to work for change. And the other thing was I learned so much about healing because what I saw in these young men dying was that as their bodies were getting more and more disfigured and emaciated, and as they were clearly dying steadily, often, almost always, the light within them was burning brighter and brighter. I saw that. I saw how they were not dying. Their bodies were dying. Some of them even talked about how they felt that they were kind of half alive until they got diagnosed with AIDS and realized they were going to die, because then they got it. Then they started fighting, knowing that that it wasn't going to come soon enough, any kind of cure or medicine to help them. They were going to die for sure, but they wanted to help those that came after them. And in that sense of purpose, there was healing, There was all kinds of healing. People who had never come out, people who were in the closet, but because they were in the intensive care unit with pneumocystis, and their families were called from Montana to come because they were going to die any minute, and so, you know, their families found out they were gay. This happened a lot, and people were pushed out of the closet, never intended to come out. But that too was a kind of healing, because when people decided to be open, they had no choice, but they were living a life and being in community and with a sense of purpose with other activists or other people who were laying hands on each other. We used to lay on hands and pray for healing. And we slowly came to understand that the healing was happening even though people were dying. That healing happens on so many different levels. So that's kind of a long way of saying that, but I was really blown away by that, because I think I'd always thought of healing as, oh, he'll get better, he won't die. But no, healing's a whole lot bigger than that. And we saw that so much. And the power of presence when people are suffering, there's really nothing you can do most of the time except being present, and the power of that, just sitting, just being, nothing to say. COVID's so different in a way and so much the same, For us, in our community, even those of us who weren't going to get it because of the way it was transmitted, it changed us forever. Despite that, it changed us forever. And this virus is changing us all forever. So we have to really focus on how we want it to change us. How we will not let it change us. Can you say more about we chose this time? It resonates with me for sure. But it is also a theory that I've had dismissed in Buddhist circles, and to focus more on the law of karma. And we are here in this life because of the way of karma, therefore do not choose. Well, we chose our actions, We chose our actions. And actions are what create karma. So, in a way, if all of our karma has brought us in this time, in this place, in these bodies, I think maybe we did choose this. There's so much mystery, There's stuff we can talk about, and then stuff we have no idea. This is so much bigger. And so I want to say, Kirby, that it's just a sense that I have too. Yeah, it said that our actions are the only thing that we own, our actions. But of course, our thoughts are very powerful too. Our intention is very powerful. Sometimes we may think that what we're contributing to this shift is very small. I think I want to stress that more than anything else. All of us, by being alive, by staying alive, by continuing to practice in whatever way, and that's going to keep changing all the time, what practice we are drawn to, even though, it's true that we're trying to dig this one deep hole. But sometimes practices get stale, and then we're drawn to another one, and hopefully we stay with that until we come to the end of it. But if we can just hang in there and keep practicing and keep listening to what is it that I can do today to help tilt this balance, to help push this new world being born. Yeah, begin again. Kalivia is reminding me of Eddie Glaude's book on James Baldwin called Begin Again, which I'm still in the middle of. Yeah. You should say more about that. Because you finished the book. It talks about the lie that America is based on, the lie of white supremacy, and how America keeps having a chance to recognize the lie and wake up from it and restructure itself and have another reconstruction. And it keeps missing its chance, and it now has another chance to begin again. We, America. We learn not that we can't trust ourselves, but we can trust ourselves. And the teachers that are teaching us to keep listening help us to trust ourselves. Oh, Astrid, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great book. And another a Black queer ancestor, James Baldwin. When we start seeing all of these people that are there for us, that are our ancestors in our lineage, spiritual practice is like that too. Begin again. Yes. Yes. Continuously in the same practice session and over again. Yes. Good point. Really good point. So let's just sit for a little while, just about 10 minutes, and then we'll close. Just to take in that we are not alone, that we have these ancestors, this lineage, this community of siblings. And if we like, we can invoke the energy of gratitude for each other, for the gift of who we are, of exactly who we are. For the gift of living in a time when we are so stretched and challenged. For the gift of people who believe in us and tell us that we are up to it, we can do it. Keep pushing, keep breathing. And sometimes rest. May we rest in the arms of the Mother. May we rest in the promise of one another's eyes of love. And hearts breaking open. May we rest in all these great hearts that are gathered here. And may we remember that we are not the doer. That we are simply allowing. We are allowing this birth to happen. It's such a miracle that we can be medicine for each other. Deep, deep gratitude to you, Lama Rod, and to everyone. Thank you so much. Please take good care of yourself. It's a razor's edge, push, but also rest, relax, be held by the earth. Listen. Deep bow. Deep bow. Deep bow.